Hello, Sarah Sabin, executive and team coach here in the Leading in the Modern Way video interview series. And I'm very excited to have with me today Lindsey Wendler, who is managing director at Dresner Partners. Lindsey, welcome to the show, and I would love for you to introduce yourself in your own words to my listeners.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. As you mentioned, I'm a managing director at Dresner Partners, which is a middle market investment bank based in Chicago, but I actually opened up their Dallas, Texas office in 2021. I specialize in mergers and acquisitions, which means I'm usually helping family and founder-owned businesses that are doing 20 to 200 million in revenue. Sell so that the owners can retire or raise capital and or partner with private equity or other institutional investors so that they can grow.
Perfect. Thank you so much for giving a little introduction there. And I'd like to kick off by you just telling us a little bit about your journey as well. And that includes your time as an entrepreneur.
Sure. Yeah, I have kind of an unconventional background for a banker. So I grew up in M&A actually. My father has a business valuation firm and he would do M&A deals based on the deal flow that would come in through his valuation work. And I really grew up in that. I worked for him. I spent summers doing it and I met a lot of entrepreneurs. So when I was in college, I realized that I might want to be an entrepreneur after having met all these people. And I had an aunt in the Philippines with a jewelry factory. My mother is from the Philippines. And I thought, okay, I have this one business connection and I don't hate jewelry. So let's just see what I can do with this. And so I brought over samples, sold them, and it really just took off. And by the time I graduated from university, I had like 85 points of sale in America for my brand. And I ended up doing my master's degree at the Royal College of Art in London with a specialization in goldsmithing and silversmithing, which is pretty unusual for a FINRA licensed banker. But you know, it was just a different life, and I got to build this business. And then I ended up raising capital from a government organization in Geneva, Switzerland. I lived there for about 4 years and grew my business. And I ended up selling it and moving back to America and really coming back to my roots. And I really love what I do because I've been there. I feel what my clients feel, and I love helping them get to the next place that they're going.
Yeah, and I love that because I think it always helps to understand where someone is coming from when you're helping them to achieve their dream, whatever that may be, selling their company or maybe acquiring another company.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I were talking earlier how it's really different from a case study when you have been in the entrepreneur's shoes and had to keep the lights on and had to make sure people were paid in the good times and the difficult times. And those are just things that you can't know unless you've been there.
Yeah, yeah, it's a true story. My background as well within startups, it really enables me to understand the pain, the mindset struggles, the keeping the lights on point that,
Yeah.
is normal for entrepreneurs to go through at some stage within the life cycle of
Yes.
their business.
Yeah, I think, I appreciate entrepreneurs so much. And by the time that I work with them, I mean, they've been through a lot of that. And I just think, if you've come all the way through that to the point where, I'm working with them, I just think it's really impressive and I know how much has gone into that.
Mm. So I'd love to know if I had a company and let's say it was at the $50 million revenue mark and I was thinking about selling that company, what would I want to think about building up in order to get ready for a potential sale?
It's a good question. And the biggest thing you can do to prepare is have really good books and records. If you're not audited, having just really good records and then doing what we call a quality of earnings report, which is like a single audit before you go to market. That's something we recommend a lot to our clients. It's really about what it does is it gives a buyer um, a lot of faith in your numbers. And what you're trying to do is minimize the perception of risk in the acquisition of your company. So anything we can do, if there's any pending lawsuits, get those cleaned up. If there's, any pending kind of anything that's not like specifically growth related, that those are just loose ends we want to tie up before preparing for a sale, because we want to get you the ultimate best value.
Mm. And what about mergers and acquisitions? So let's say a company is looking to acquire another company. Would they be looking for those same things when they're looking to acquire another company? That's what you'd recommend they would look at?
Sure. So a lot of times when we work on the buy side, so when we're helping a company go buy other companies, they're looking for a very specific set of criteria. And that helps us a lot because it'll be industry, sector, size. There might be certain like margin characteristics that they're looking for. And that helps us weed out a lot of companies. Then once we find, let's say we have a small pool of companies that we are really interested in, what we want to see are things that make us feel safe about this investment. That, is management going to stay if we're expecting them to stay? Is there kind of a chain of command so that if management leaves, the company can still continue to move? Is there customer concentration? If one customer leaves, is this company going to fall apart? Some of these value drivers you can manage if you're a larger company coming in. But there's different types of investors. Like a private equity fund might be looking at an investment in a company as a platform investment, and that's usually the first investment. And they will use that platform to then go make other acquisitions. And there's different criteria for whether you're a platform investment or an add-on investment. And that might be getting into the weeds a little bit, but the best thing you can do for a buyer is make it easy for them to buy.
Yeah, and I think these principles that you've brought out, so make it clear what value you have, having good financials, and some of the things that you've mentioned are just good business principles, because those are risk factors even if you're intending to do nothing with your business. If you have
That's exactly
one
right.
customer, that's a problem. If it's only you and you get hit by a bus tomorrow and you've got no kind of succession planning, that's a big issue. So
Yes.
taking aside what you may or may not want to do in the future, thinking about all of this as you're going along and building foundations accordingly is important.
Absolutely. I mean, it is just as valuable to the company itself.
So, Lindsey, I'd love to know more about some of your views on leadership. And I
Yeah.
always like to start with, how do you personally define strong leadership?
Yeah, I think leadership is it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. And what I consider strong leadership is a leader that really lifts up and empowers people. Someone who is creating a sense of belonging and appreciation for people and can identify individuals' skill sets and really bring that out of them. Um, Coaching, help, it's really about other people. And I've seen this done really well. I think we've all seen this done really well and less well done. And I think there's been a big shift in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, especially the last 5 years, where there's really an emphasis on looking at this. It's not to say that we've gotten it right completely, but I think we're seeing more and more people with a consciousness around good leadership. And that's something I appreciate a lot. Even if it's not perfect, that there is an acknowledgement and an effort put towards um, really doing the best for the people who are working for you.
Mm. And I do agree there has definitely been a shift, particularly in the last 5 years. And, there is more emphasis put on it nowadays. And I like the point you raised about it's not about getting it perfect, right? We are all humans, we all make mistakes, but it's about doing the best that you can and acting from a place of genuinely caring about people.
Yes. Yes. I think we're moving towards a people first type of or the better cultures are moving towards a people first environment. And considering the fact that in the US and I would say in the UK and Europe, we're largely service-based economies.
Mm.
Your people are your business. And there was a time, I think, when you could kind of be a tyrant and people would still work for you. And that time's passed or it is passing. And people want to feel acknowledged and seen and important when they show up. And they do better work when they do. And I think leaders are realizing this, and to the extent that they can help and put policies in place that really help these people, I think you're starting to see this.
Mm. So within Dresner, how do you cultivate a positive company culture, and what kind of steps do you take to make sure that employees feel a sense of belonging, feel valued and motivated?
So whenever each deal I work on has a deal team, and it's made up of usually about four junior associates or analysts. And throughout the course of the year, what I try to do is really empower them, um, talk to them about their goals. Sometimes it's not enough just to talk about goals, but if one has a goal of some particular thing, there's usually some steps they have to take to get there. So helping them understand what those steps are. And then for some of them, I've even been their accountability partner. Like, hey, I'm seeing you're not really progressing here. I thought this was something that's important to you. What is the block? Okay, do you need me every Monday morning to harass you? Because I will if you need that. So those are the kinds of things that I've done to try to help lift up the people working with me, because if they get lift up, then all of our work is better. Um, you know, some people do it a little differently. Some people are not really into but that's how I see it.
Mm. I think one of the things I heard was giving ownership over to the other person to say, I need you to check in with me, or actually I'm good. And I think, autonomy is a big thing within motivation. It's giving people the choice, because
Yes.
essentially no one likes being told what to do. But having said that, as long as expectations are clear, then, there has to be accountability around that. And I think where things can go a bit wrong is where expectations aren't clear and people aren't performing. And then you're like, well, people aren't performing. But it turns out they
Yeah.
weren't clear on exactly what was expected of them.
Right. Right. I think that's exactly right. I think having clear expectations and having those uncomfortable conversations when you thought things were clear and there's kind of a misalignment.
Mm.
And then certain people have different work types. Some people you leave them alone and they thrive. And some people really want really regular check-ins. I mean, I even see this with my clients. Some of my clients thrive just by like getting a weekly report as we're going through a process, and then being more involved when things get a little bit more active. I have other clients that like want to hear from me every day to make sure that, no one's dropped dead and like everything is still okay.
Mm,
And,
yeah.
I think that's just like a personality thing.
Yeah, and I love that because, within people that you work with, it's getting to know that there are different personalities and you interact with them in different ways.
Yes,
So it's kind of a leadership agility, if you like.
I think so. I mean, I think that's helpful. It may or may not be for some people, but in the teams I work with, and each team is pretty, I work with a lot of teams, but each individual team is kind of small. I think for things to get done well, we do have to kind of be perceptive and have that kind of communication.
Hmm. So, from your perspective, how have you invested in yourself as a leader, and what steps do you take to grow and evolve as you're going along?
So I read a ton, and I read books, and I love audiobooks. If I'm just going around the house doing something, I've always got an audiobook playing. I love podcasts, um, anything to kind of get different perspectives, to listen to something about maybe something that's going on that I'm not well versed in yet. I'm just curious, and I think being curious helps you stay um, kind of ahead or on top of what you're trying to do. I also think taking care of your body is really important.
Mm.
So it's hard to be really great if you're not sleeping. Sleeping is so important. Some amount of movement. I mean, I won't claim to be a gym rat, but like I try to just move a little bit every day. And then like things like the occasional massage or spa, like I just think taking care of your body when you're going really hard at work is so important.
Mm, I couldn't agree more. Self-care. The oft
Self-care,
over,
real,
yeah, but
yes.
it's so often overlooked, isn't it?
Well, it's so easy to overlook. You're busy, and then like I've got kids, and you're running around, you're doing 10,000 things. And
Mm.
I don't know if you have these like chains of like massage memberships like we do here, but like I have a membership, and I go like twice a month. I go get my 90-minute massage, and like I have to believe that if I did that for the next 20 years, I've got to be in better shape than if I hadn't have done that, right?
Yeah. Well, look, it's about small steps, isn't it? And
Yes.
I think that it's good that you've differentiated. Okay, well, I might not be a gym rat, but I try to move. And that is important because actually, it's been shown that it's more effective to move regularly. So, the 10,000 steps a day metric, for example, it's been more effective to move regularly than it is to do one or two intense workouts in a week, because the human body is meant to move. It's very important for our mental and physical health.
Yes.
And if you want to
Mentally.
perform at your peak, it literally makes good sense to take care of yourself.
Yeah. And I think, you hear self-care, you know, we're told we need to do this a lot, but I think having like really tangible things to do. So is it laying down for 15 minutes and during the day and in silence, or listening to a podcast you really love, like just to kind of relax. I think things like that, and being consistent with whichever modality you choose, I think is important, because I see people get run down and their health takes a hit, and it's really hard to do anything great if you're unwell. And if you are suffering from something chronic, it's even more important to be taking care of yourself. And a lot of people deal with that. So definitely putting yourself first, at least sometimes, very important.
Mm. And as a curiosity thing, what are your top three book, audio, or podcast recommendations at the moment?
Okay, so um let me think for a second, because So I loved Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, about the founder of Nike. And it's just an incredible story of entrepreneurship and how that company really should have never even been a company. And I was a little disappointed in the movie Air because I think I have no idea how Phil Knight is in real life, but through the book, through like his voice, I just pictured him really differently than how he was portrayed in the movie. So I guess that's like to be decided, but I just thought the book was incredible. For podcasts, I like for like the motivational, I like some silly podcasts, don't get me wrong, but for motivational podcasts, I like Lewis Howes. Uh it's something,
Oh, is
it's
it the
called
School
the
of Greatness?
School of Greatness. That's what it
Yeah,
is. I knew it was
yeah.
Greatness something. I like Lewis Howes. That's kind of like on my, and I like Jordan Harbinger, I think is his name. Um I just have these things like on play, and then I forget what they are, but it's really good. They have shows about kind of being skeptical. And I am not a very skeptical person by nature. Like I'm more on the entrepreneurial, like how can it be done side. And I think it's a good exercise for someone like me to kind of look at things skeptically. And so I appreciate that. Sometimes I'm like a little bit frustrated with them, but but I think it's a good practice. Um, but those two are really great. I mean, I love the book The Power of Now. It's not really a business book
Oh,
at all by any means, but
love it.
it makes me feel peaceful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good reminder to stay in the present. I've read it a few times now and I keep going back and I'm like,
Yes,
oh, I knew that, but I've forgotten again.
same. I've gone back to that book and his other one, A New Earth. I've
Yeah.
gone back to those, and I find it, even though they're not business books at all, they have helped me because so much of what I think you do when you're building a business or in leadership is kind of nerve-wracking, and like it brings you back to a place of um calm awareness that like none of this none of this really matters in the long run. It matters now, but that's why you just have to be here kind of now and not really worry too much about how things unfold because they're going to unfold anyway.
Yeah, they will always unfold as they're going to unfold, as much as
Yeah.
everyone wants to plan every little detail.
That is right.
Yeah. Final question, Lindsey.
Yes.
What one piece of advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh gosh. Let me open up my scroll. No. So I would definitely emphasize to my 20-year-old self the power of quality networking, really investing in relationships. This is something that I've really built my career on since coming back into investment banking. So I'm involved with a couple of organizations in particular, and I think about it kind of like investing in your 401k. Like if I go to an event or just like this, if I go to one event every month for 5 years, I may see a percentage of those people 60 times, and my competitors might have seen them 0 times.
Mhm.
Um, Not only is that great for being top of mind, but I probably have built real friendships with these people in that amount of time. And the thing I think is most important to consider when you are building a network or you're doing networking is to be a person of value first for others. So to bring resources, to meet people, keep notes, and like I keep notes in my phone that are keyword searchable, and then I make quality introductions. I won't just introduce anybody, but I try to make a lot of introductions to make sure other people are, I can provide value to them. And that has paid off dividends. I mean, the first year is kind of a building year. The second year, you kind of like start seeing some of this come back around. Years later, I have some great friends. Some of my close friends are part of these like business groups that I've been a part of. And I have a really sustainable pipeline of business just from being part of or just participating. So I would tell myself how important relationships are and how to build them the right way and to make them sustainable.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And, you know, what I was thinking of imagery wise when you were talking is planting seeds. You know,
Yeah,
relationships are like seeds. You plant the seed and then you water the seed, but
water it.
you don't necessarily expect the seed to sprout overnight. I mean, it may do, but
Yeah,
that's
you might
not the
get
primary
lucky.
expectation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes you meet someone, you just click with them, and then you've got a best friend for life, or you meet someone who has a business deal for you immediately, but that's not really how it works. It's about showing up and being a person of value first in order to get value, I think. And just being really consistent. And then the other part, kind of what we talked about earlier, the only other thing I would say to my younger self is that, everything unfolds perfectly, and to just be really present with what I'm doing and who I'm with, and like, taking the worrying down a notch, because as long as you're doing the right things just kind of unfold the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation, Lindsay. Some really valuable pearls of wisdom came out today. So thank you very
I'm
much.
so glad.
And
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
you're very welcome. And my listeners, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation today as well. If you would like to be part of the Leading in the Modern Way video interview series, please do reach out. Thanks. Bye.